Yo, what's going on everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon Go discussion video. Alright, so today's video is going to be a bit of a follow-up to yesterday's video where I talked about the hot mess that was Mega Rayquaza Elite Raid Day. A lot of players were extremely unhappy as a result of that event, and I do think that there is a major underlying issue which is causing a lot of that negative sentiments. Regardless of how you feel with Pokemon Go, I think this is an important topic because when it comes to the longevity of this game, this is an issue that Niantic needs to address. And I do think that they've been going in the completely wrong direction with Pokemon Go, and it's about time that they've made some major changes. So what is the big issue that I'm talking about? Well, case in point, when it comes to Pokemon Go, it very heavily favors people who live in high population urban areas. In terms of the design of this game, you're basically going to get the best experience depending on where you live. And for those of us who live in suburban or rural areas, we're basically going to get an incomplete experience. Now, I totally recognize that some people will say that they can still get a full experience playing Pokemon Go, even if they live in rural or suburban areas. But let's be real here, that's not going to be the case for everyone. For people who live in suburban areas, for example, they basically have to drive out to certain areas in order to get all of the Pokemon that they want. And for people who live in urban areas, they could just step out of their doors and just walk a block down the street and they could hit a bunch of gyms. I really do think that's unfair. I really do think that for a lot of people who do not complain about Pokemon Go's current state, it's because they live in areas where they do not have to jump through so many hoops in order to get certain Pokemon or to be able to do raids and different activities. And I think this is something that Niantic is at fault for, because when it comes to the design of Pokemon Go and a lot of the design decisions that they make, they are going about it in the lens of people who play in urban areas. Like take for example, this recent Elite Raid Day. The way that they designed it and the way that they laid it out, it was incredibly difficult for anyone who does not live in a big city to get the most elite raids in. The reason for that is because with the set schedule that they had of 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and I believe it was 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock, a lot of players just simply did not have the numbers. I feel like for people who live in rural areas, it was near impossible for you to take down these raids. The reason for that is because you got no help from remote raiders because all of these raids were local only. And unless you were a part of a robust community, it was not going to be possible for you to get any Mega Energy or even meteorites during this event. And in my opinion, that's incredibly bogus because when it comes to Mega Rayquaza, it currently is the #1 Pokemon in the game right now. And for a lot of players to essentially miss out on that Pokemon, I personally feel like that's more on Niantic rather than the players. Just because a player lives in a rural area, they should not be punished or restricted for being in that area. They should have almost the same experience that other players have, even if they do not have the same circumstances. And the reason why I say that is because, well, at one point, we actually had that. Before remote raids were nerfed, people who live in rural areas were able to get very similar experiences to those who live in urban areas. And I felt like that was a great way that Niantic fixed the divide between rural and urban play experiences. But of course, as we all know, Niantic nerfed remote raiding because they set a hard limit to how many remote raids you can do and they increased the cost of each remote raid pass. A lot of those players who live in low population areas suddenly had a very bad experience with Pokemon Go. And a lot of them resorted to cheating. I know a lot of people who live in rural areas that often spoof in Pokemon Go. I feel like there was a huge resurgence of spoofers ever since they nerfed remote raids. And this has affected a lot of players who want to play legitimately because now all of a sudden, a lot of the common gyms that I defend every single day in order to get Pokecoins, now they're getting constantly spammed by spoofers because a lot of people are going to these higher population areas and taking over gyms. And we didn't really have this issue before. I feel like when Niantic had a more balanced gameplay with remote raid passes and a lot of those pandemic bonuses, the gameplay felt just so much better. And I think it's even funnier that when it comes to all the things that Niantic was worrying about, specifically the game falling away from an exploration-based game, I actually felt like a lot more players were going out and exploring because they did not feel the pressure of having to be in a high population area. Take for example, for people who live in suburban areas, I feel like for most community days and raid days, they would drive out to these cities in order to play Pokemon Go because they wanted to get the best experience possible successful with these events. But because Niantic had a lot of these pandemic bonuses in place, now they were going to their local parks, because going to a local park was kind of like the experience that people who live in urban areas were able to get. And this is something that I feel like Niantic completely missed when they started nerfing all of these different quality of life improvements. When they nerfed remote raids, a lot of people just flat out quit raiding, and I think it's mainly because they were not getting the best experience anymore. And once again, Niantic was catering to urban players. And this has been the theme with Pokémon GO for the past several years, pretty much since Pokémon GO was first released. Whenever Niantic introduces a new feature or a new event, they always seem to design these events and features around people who live in high population areas. And they really should not be doing that. When it comes to Pokémon GO, the experience is always going to be very different outside of the streets of San Francisco. So if that is their only baseline, well, they're actually alienating a huge population of Pokémon GO players. And I really feel like this is the core reason why there's so much unhappiness when it comes to the Pokémon GO community, because a lot of people who do not live in urban areas, they're getting a miserable experience when it comes to Pokémon GO. And don't get me wrong, I think you can still have a great experience playing Pokémon GO even in low population areas, but it does require a lot of effort. You do have to find yourself a robust community, if there even is one in your neighborhood, and then on top of that, you have to be active and you have to be social. And I think there's a lot of players who just do not want to do that, and that is a luxury that urban players certainly have. They do not have to go out and form communities or join communities in order to get the best experience, because chances are they could go to the raid at the corner of the street and it's going to be filled up with a bunch of randos, and they're going to have no problem taking down that boss. And then they could walk 2 more blocks down and do another raid. That's basically the experience of an urban player. So where do we go from here? Well, first and foremost, I feel like what Niantic needs to do is get in better touch with their community. Maybe the way that they could do that is by spending some time in rural areas and seeing what the experience is like. Because every time I've talked to developers of Pokemon Go, like, they always say that they are aware of the issues for rural players, but they haven't really been presenting a lot of active solutions. A lot of them perceive the rural experience as still being somewhat close to the urban experience, that players are just simply complaining for the sake of complaining. And that is so far from the truth. If you actually go out to a rural area, you will find that Pokemon Go is essentially a dead game, and it's not going to be the same experience as, let's say, playing in downtown San Francisco, or downtown Chicago, or downtown New York. I think what Niantic needs to do is take a step back and reevaluate how they look at their game. Because, like I said, when we had the pandemic bonuses as well as remote raids pre-nerf, the gameplay felt so much better and it felt so much more balanced. Even if you lived in a rural area, you still were able to get very positive experiences, and you were able to join global communities and make a lot of friends that later on down the road you might be able to meet during Pokemon Go Fest. It kind of felt like how it was with World of Warcraft and meeting your guildmates in BlizzCon. Like, it was a really positive and really cool experience, and there were some people in the global community that I always talked to through Discord that I wasn't able to meet in person until Pokemon Go Fest, and I always thought that was a really cool thing. But Niantic seemingly took that away, because now people are going to be restricted to their local communities, which in and of itself is not a bad thing, because local communities are also a great way for you to meet a lot of people. But at the same time, I do feel like they killed a huge aspect of Pokemon Go that was actually really cool. And yeah, I think Niantic needs to realize that with all the quality of life improvements from those pandemic bonuses, as well as remote raids, how they were before the nerf, it did not take away from the sense of exploration. If that's all they care about, if they want to keep Pokemon Go as an exploration-based game, then they need to realize they had that, and they didn't need to fix what wasn't broken. But yeah, in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below. Are you someone who completely disagrees with me? Do you feel like Pokemon Go is actually in a good place? Or are you someone who totally agrees with me and you feel like this is something that does need to be addressed by Niantic? I would like to know all of your thoughts. Let's have a great discussion. Make sure you share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. If you ended up enjoying this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And also don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You all make this channel content possible. If you want to support the contents of the channel, the absolute best way you could do so is by joining my Patreon. If you do that, you'll get a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon Go friends list. So when it comes to the friendship system or remote raids, if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a different way, you could always do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow. And that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.